Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Rouge Rugby podcast, where we talk about real Canadian rugby. I'm Stu Hardy, and once again, I am joined by Derek Brissett back from his trip across the Atlantic. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can see he's supporting that lovely Glasgow Warriors kit. You know, how did it feel to be their lucky mascot for the postseason?
Yeah, I think I take all the credit for their victory in the URC Championship. They kind of had they had a trip to South Africa before the season ended there, and I think they lost every game on that trip. And then they came back, they played Zebra, which I mean doesn't really count as a game. So they won that one, of course, because everybody did. But then I showed up to Scotstoun Stadium for the quarterfinal match against the Stormers. It was pouring rain because, like, when is it not pouring rain over there, I guess, right? You're from there, so well, not from Scotland, but
I'm from the general area,
you're from
yes.
the general area, the UK, and also you understand that. So I was just like, damn, I'm not used to needing this much rain gear for a rugby game in late in June here. So that's where the origins of this sweater come in because it was cold and raining, so I had to make a nice little pit stop into the lovely Glasgow Warriors gift shop there before the game just to be able to make it through that game. But the game itself was a lot of fun, man. It was like playoff game, so like the atmosphere was unreal despite the weather, right? Like even with the weather, place was packed. Nobody seemed bothered by it at all, which was really nice. The Warriors came out to enter Sandman, whole stadiums like, rocking. You can kind of feeling it move. I thought it was I to be honest, man, I thought it was so loud. Like the whole game. Was like I mean, other than the when kickers are kicking. But silence definitely did not help Manny Lebach in that game because he went 0 for 4 and may or may not be the reason the Stormers lost that game, depending on um I guess according to the Stormer fans behind us in the crowd, he was definitely the reason the Stormers lost that game. The Glasgow Warriors side might be like they played pretty well in the second half in order to win that. But to the Stormer fans that were sitting 2 rows behind us, I hope Manny Lebach got home safely because I'm not sure he would have if those guys found him. But that's besides the point. But yeah, I thought that stadium was super loud and which was insane until the next night when I found out what an actual loud stadium sounds like. Because we went to the Taylor Swift concert in Edinburgh, which did have a fun brief moment of everybody obviously freaking out about like Taylor Swift and like the Eras tour and all the hype that's surrounding that, and I'm just sitting there being like kind of like looking at my girlfriend being like, like we're standing on like Murrayfield grass right now, right? Like this Murrayfield, like there's a 20-foot poster of Finn Russell right there. Like, why does everyone care about this Taylor person? I don't understand. But that was kind of the trip, and then obviously, a couple other weeks to do all the wonderful sightseeing and sampling the fine cuisine that the fine liquid cuisine, more or less, of the great country of the United Kingdom there. So ultimately, pretty good trip. And yeah, I was psyched to see that the Glasgow Warriors ended up winning the URC because now I feel like I can take credit for it because I guess it was all me there.
Yeah, it sounds like a great trip, seeing the Warriors play against the Stormers, definitely two high caliber teams. Visiting Murrayfield as well, hallowed ground for Scottish rugby,
Yeah,
and seeing Taylor Swift, I guess. I don't know what position she plays, so we'll have to come back to that. If any
she feels like she
Swifty
would be a fly
listening,
half. She feels like she'd be a fly half. She seems very involved in everything. Wants to know everything
maybe.
that's going on.
If
Yeah.
any Swifties know what position Taylor plays, please let us know.
She does reference rugby in a song though, so
All
it's
right, all right.
it's there. So she's definitely aware of it. So we got
All
to
right.
figure out how to get her out to some MLR games or something. How
Absolutely.
did she not put the MLR like halftime show or for the MLR Shield final? How was that not part of the Eras tour? Like
Yeah, I know
I
it's
can't believe Taylor Swift like slipped up that much that she ignored such a prestigious date in the stadium
Mhm.
that
Yeah,
is
well,
MLR
no
Shield
one's no
final.
one's perfect. You know,
Oh,
you're gonna make mistakes at some point.
that's true.
Anyway, you've been away from a lot of rugby that's been happening in Canada, so I think it's time to bring you back to this side of the Atlantic. You know, we're gonna go from coast to coast. We're gonna start on the Pacific coast and work our way to the Atlantic, and we're gonna start off with talking about the Vancouver Highlanders. Again, thanks to all the guys that appeared on the podcast for the last episode. But now we have the result of their first games because it was a double header. The Highlanders first stepped out against the Canada Selects. This was a pretty entertaining game. I gotta say, this was the one that had the majority of the players um, from the official squad list, not the reserves. And, it's good as well to get some of these Canadian players who haven't, been playing too much in MLR or been playing for other clubs and stuff. Get them like a little bit of warm up before the Ottawa series that's coming up for the next couple of weeks. Final score Highlanders 44, Canada Selects 33. Very entertaining. Both of the games are now available on YouTube. They were live streamed, so now you can go back and watch the entirety. Now we have the Highlanders against Barbados. Barbados, I believe, are a tier three nation. Um, I don't know when their last full test was, but it's clearly been a while. Again, this wasn't a full test because obviously the Highlanders are not the national side. Um, but they came in
I mean, I
and
saw that the Canada. Well, I guess they played the national. I almost played the national side in the first game.
that is true. But
But
as in the Highlanders aren't the
the Highlanders
national
aren't the
team.
national team, but I guess they beat a team that has 9 guys on the national team. So that's
Well, we'll get to national team selection in a bit.
yeah. Oh, okay. Take
Um,
that one for later. Sure.
yeah. So we had Barbados come over and they played a game. But these guys with the Highlanders, they've been together for what, a couple of months at least by now, playing and training like multiple times a week, obviously under the guidance of the coaching staff there, including leadership of Curry Hitchborn and Ralph McRae. And so the final score, Vancouver Highlanders again 44, Barbados 12. And this was a good opportunity for all the reserves to be able to like put their hands up and say, hey, this is what I can do for the Highlanders. Especially since three of the guys from the Highlanders have been called up
Mhm.
to play for the national squad, with obviously a few more on the reserves. So there is a chance that come the next game on July 20th against Germany, maybe some players who are playing with Canada may have picked up a few bruises, may not be available for that. This was a great opportunity. Obviously, the same score for both Highlanders games, clearly standing out. Um, but this event was free and big turnout, which was obviously great to see. I think it was like over 1,000 people in attendance, which is fantastic, especially on a Friday afternoon.
Mhm.
Obviously, leading into the long weekend helps. But yeah, great way to kick off the Canada Day weekend. And obviously, we just wanted to say happy Canada Day to everyone who celebrates. Hope you had a fantastic time. And yeah, you had an excuse to bunk off on the Friday and watch some quality rugby. So that's always good.
Yeah, I was like super excited to see, the Highlanders finally get their season underway. Um, uh, unfortunately, I did have like I was, on the trip coming back, did have a family wedding this weekend. So, fortunately, time was a little scarce on the weekend. So I will be taking advantage of those the YouTube videos to actually get caught up on the events of the game
Mhm.
itself. So I don't really have too much to say about the actual play of rugby and stuff, other than the fact that it's just generally super exciting to see that the Highlanders have have kicked off their their campaign and everything that they're trying to do. I loved hearing what the guys had to say on the show last week that you did with them, Stu. I thought that was that was really well done. And this team, I think, is something that Canadian rugby fans can be excited about. a little evidence already, as like as you mentioned, some guys have already been selected for the Canadian national team against Scotland and Romania that we'll get into in a minute. Really excited to see that there was over 1,000 people there, right? So I feel like hitting hitting that 1,000 fan mark on the the first hit out is a good sign for the club. And I mean, I hope all 1,000, all it was just over 1,000. I think it was 1,023. I think it said on Instagram. So I mean, I hope
Yeah.
all 1,023 of those people had a really good time. And when they get their next game at the end of the month against Germany here, like I hope all 1,023 of them are coming back and maybe bringing a friend as well, right? So like that'll be good. Like I said, unfortunately, I do have to get caught up on the actual events of the game. But it's I'm just it's feels like a very exciting time for Canadian rugby. This tied into the Coast to Coast Cup and stuff that happened while I was gone as well. So
Yeah.
I picked a bad month to go away, man. Let's be honest here. This was not the best timing, but we're back now. We're back now.
Well, speaking of being away, we had the final qualification tournament for the Olympic sevens for
Oh
both
yeah,
the men's and women's.
this might have been a business decision to not watch it on the trip, though.
Fair enough. The competition took place in Monaco, and it was basically a winner stays on. Whoever made it to the final and won it would take the final spot. Now, considering how Canada had done throughout the Sevens series this year, not expecting much, but they did get a couple of wins in the pool stage. They then lost to Great Britain, who did eventually reach the final, but they had done enough to make it through to the knockout stages. They won their first game, and then they came up against the Blitzboks. And yeah,
Oh yeah, how
you
let's
can
box.
guess what happened next. Final result
I
from
still can't believe Kenya beat that team and sent them there. That's the
yeah, and
worst.
yeah,
Kenya
but
did not do us a favor with that win. I mean,
no, they did not.
all good to
But
Kenya.
I'll
Congrats,
be
but
honest. It could have been Kenya. It could have been South Africa. Either of those teams would have put up a
yeah.
definite like powerhouse against Canada. The final score from that game 28-0.
Mhm.
So South Africa made it to the final against Great Britain, and they emerged victorious. Um, Canada had their bronze medal game against Spain, losing that as well. So they finished fourth and obviously not making it to the Olympics. So 2020 remains the only Olympics that they have qualified for as the men's team. Um, the women's, they have now qualified for all three Olympics that have hosted sevens. So yeah, they
Bronze
continue
medal
to
in
be the
2016 too.
yeah. Here's hoping that Canada can replicate that success this time around in Paris. But I'm going to bring it all the way back. We're moving away from the Pacific coast. We're landing somewhere in the middle in Ontario as we have some news come out for the Ottawa series. First up was the announcement that Hub 350 has become the newest partner for Rugby Canada. In their press release, they say Rugby Canada is pleased to announce that Kanata North Business Association, home of Canada's largest technology park with over 500 companies and 33,000 employees, has become an official Rugby Canada partner. Partnership comes ahead of the Ottawa series in July. Partnership will provide Rugby Canada with some of the leading technology companies in the world, creating a platform for these companies to learn how they can support our national teams to compete on the global stage, as well as our home matches in Ottawa. Ecosystem Hub 350 is an ecosystem for KNBA's partners to work and collaborate, located just 26 kilometers from Ottawa's downtown core in the Canada North Technology Park. Nathan Brombis, the Rugby Canada CEO, goes on to say, "We're pleased to announce that Kanata North have chosen to support Rugby Canada and our international matches against Scotland and Romania in Ottawa this summer. KNBA brings together some of the leading technology companies in Canada who compete on the global stage, just like our national teams. We look forward to working more closely with KNBA and their member companies to play a part in fostering a vibrant business community in the nation's capital." It's going to be interesting. It's something that I am wondering about when it comes to sponsorship. If these are going to be, if Hub 350 or KMBA is going to be like the principal sponsor for Canada for this series, but that is yet to be seen. What is known, absolutely, are the 34 players that will be part of the Summer Series squad.
Mhm.
And it's definitely an interesting choice. If you were expecting any overseas players playing in France,
You have
why?
not been paying attention to the last 5 years of years,
Yeah,
3 years.
absolutely. So this is going to be the first. So as I said, it's the first series for Rugby Canada following the La Villa Cup in Spain last November. Um, so Kingsley Jones has selected 18 players from MLR clubs, three players from the Canada Sevens, two players from the Welsh Premiership, three from overseas amateur clubs, and three players from the Vancouver Highlanders. And 13 of those players are uncapped. And yeah, and as you can guess, Tyler Ardron, Tyler Duguid are not
No, no.
um, in the
Well,
picture.
Ardron said he retired from international play. So I mean,
Well,
that's never.
he's used a lot of like vague language to be like, "Oh, if Canada make it to the World Cup, I may be available
Yeah,
for that."
that's a
But
yeah.
it's clear and
That's
obvious that he's
that's a big capital bolded, underlined, italicized, circled, highlighted if
yeah,
though. That's a very key word in that sentence.
yeah.
Um I don't know. Do you got any thoughts on the squad, or should I get into mine first? Or
Well, I'll let you go ahead. I've talked a bit. You can chat from
yeah,
there.
all right. So this squad, I saw like I was kind of like reading online, like hitting up like Reddit and some of the comment sections and everything, and I think the I think it seems like people generally don't like it or aren't a big fan. I don't know. Like, did you get the same kind of feeling, Stu, or
Yeah,
like
but
generally people aren't too happy about it? Um,
mhm,
I to be honest, I do like it. Um, I do like it, but I think it highlights two major problems that Rugby Canada does currently have,
mhm,
right? And so the reason I like it is because, quite frankly, this is what I think we have been talking about on the podcast of wanting to see Kingsley Jones do with the squad, right? Like go younger, go uncapped guys, right? Like we've commented on like too many teams in the past have had since they missed out on the World Cup and lost that game to Chile or whatever, we're like, we've had a lot of like squad announcements, conversations, talking about it's like, maybe a few too many guys over 30, a
mhm,
few, right,
yeah,
and stuff like that. And it's like we've really been wanting the Rugby Canada men's national team to start skewing younger, start getting some of the next generation of guys experience, right? And
yeah,
you're saying there's 13 guys that are uncapped. There's a ton of pride guys. There's a handful of amateur players, which is also kind of wild, obviously, as well. You got Stockwood from the Arrows Academy, and you got Jamin Hodgkins from Atlantic Privateers as well, right? So like, and a handful of the Highlander guys are coming too. So a couple of those like newer high performance programs already finding, sending guys to the national team, which is good for that's what we want those programs to be doing, right? So
yeah,
it's like from that perspective, I do actually really like the squad, and I like the idea of skewing younger. Um, like on the other side of the coin, though, I do think that the squad still highlights. I think there's two issues that Rugby Canada is going to have to figure out if they're going to get back to the World Cup or if they're going to
Yeah.
just, succeed in general on the international stage. The first is exactly what you already mentioned, Stu. Where are all the overseas guys? Um,
Hmm.
you got like your season. Those seasons are over too. As you said, I watched Glasgow win a trophy. Watched a couple other teams win trophies. It's like that those seasons are done too. Um, right. So it's like where are those guys? Right. And it's obviously one thing that it's like there's a handful of guys that have been common names and not coming over, right? And for whatever reason, there's a ton of speculation onto what those reasons are. So without any actual concrete proof and evidence, I'm not going to get into those reasons, but feel free to scour through some certain websites and message boards and communities online, and you can find some speculation about that. But I think if you take like you said, a guy like Ross Brody, I think we are kind of talking about before, where it's like that guy played for the Arrows. He played, for the Canadian national team all his time while he was playing here. He decided to go and play for a team in South Africa and has not been seen on the national team since. So like I don't know what's up with that.
Yeah.
Rugby Canada really needs to fix that relationship between the national team and for some reason the fact that guys that are playing overseas are never part of national team squads.
Yeah.
Right, and that is something that we talk about every squad selection,
Hmm.
right? And I think we'll continue to talk about it until it's fixed because it's once again a very glaring omission. um
Hmm.
the second issue I think I have with the team, and I hope it doesn't contradict the fact that I just said I like that the team is skewing younger. Um,
Yeah.
right. I don't think it contradicts it. So please, Stu, you're gonna have to let me know if this is like contradicting statements and I'm gonna sound like an idiot here.
Okay.
So that's your job. Your job is
All
to,
right. All right.
yeah.
Come on. Come on. Get on
But
with the statement.
I think Rugby Canada is kind of just at the stage of we're bringing knives to a gunfight whenever we like announce a squad. And basically, what I mean by that is rugby union went professional in 1995.
Hmm.
It is 29 years later, right?
Yeah.
Like the year is 2024. And as we just kind of highlighted, we're bringing amateur players to play an international test match against Scotland. Right. And
Hmm.
like the Pride, I'm counting the Pride as an amateur team in this, even though they're probably more of the elite high performance level of amateur. But they do
Yeah.
play in
But
they play in the BC Premier League. So I
yeah.
mean like
Yeah.
they're
Yeah. I get where you're coming from.
yeah, like they're kind like they're semi-pro at best, right?
Yeah.
Same with probably the Highlanders, the Highlanders, the Atlantic Privateers, the Arrows Academy, right? Like they're kind of towing that line, really, even if players do get paid. Um,
Yeah.
right. And I think like I look back at like when Kingsley Jones got his contract extended, and there was a comment in the official statement about how there's like 90 players in elite high performance environments. And when we were talking about it at the time, we were like, well, how much does that actually have to do with Rugby Canada? Right. And how
Yeah.
much, like, because we were
Yeah.
like, I think at the time we mathed it out that it's all the MLR guys plus the Pacific Pride was how you
Yeah.
arrived at 90. Right.
Yeah.
And the unfortunate thing that has happened is that the arrows don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
Right. And the first squad announcement that we have post arrows is a whole bunch of pride dudes, right?
Yeah.
A whole bunch of pride guys. And a handful of guys from the new setups that have come in, which is a good thing, but it's just kind of like it's not the amateur era anymore,
Yeah.
right? And like we need to Rugby Canada, I think, does need to work to find a way to either fund, like, not even if it's necessarily themselves or whatever, Rugby Canada teams, but it's like give more funding to, say, let's say the Highlanders, the Privateers, Arrows Academy, like Coast to Coast Cup and stuff, because it's like if guys are still have to, like, go to work or go to school, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Like they, it's something that, say, the guys on Scotland that are coming over probably aren't doing,
Yeah.
right? Like, the Scotland guys car probably aren't doing like a shift of construction work or firefighting, then hopping on
Yeah.
the plane to come play
I'm
Canada,
I'm gonna
right?
piggyback on what you just said, but I'm actually gonna paraphrase Will Buxton of Drive to Survive fame. Um, Canada aren't bringing knives to a gunfight. They're bringing a spoon.
Mm,
Like they are so categorically out of their depth, and
see it.
like, and like, cards on the table. We know why, you know, can Scotland coming over. Well, next year another tier one European nation will be coming over,
Yeah.
hopefully during the Lions tour, and it's not to challenge for the victory. It's a cash cow. That's what these
Which
games are
isn't,
for. And
hold
and
on, which isn't bad.
no, I'm not saying
Isn't
it's
bad.
bad. I'm
Like, yeah,
I'm
go
I'm
make,
saying
you
that,
need to make money in rugby. Like, it's not
yeah,
bad.
but hang on, let me explain my point, because it's been 22 years since Canada beat Scotland, and there's been opportunities since. There was that game in, I believe, 2014
Yeah.
that came about because of red card, and Scotland were able to hold off and claim victory. But no one's expecting Canada to, challenge Scotland in this game. And that's the mentality that's changed or not changed so much in
Well,
regards to
I think,
Canada. Because so again, and this is the thing. So, we've been saying, we need to get younger guys into the squad. We need players to be getting more experience. We need to, move away from the guys in their 30s and look at the guys in their, early 20s, because these are the guys that are going to be going to, hopefully,
yeah,
Australia and the USA
yeah.
and whichever World Cup it is in 2035.
Hmm.
But the problem is, and this isn't exclusive to Canada, following every World Cup,
Yeah.
there's a huge amount of players that announce their international retirement. And obviously with Canada, that's a bit different, but with some guys announcing that, they'll be playing in Spain and then they're gonna go, focus on a career elsewhere. They're gonna, switch to the 9 to 5, switch to going into the fire service, something along those lines. And as a result, you bring in young guys and you need to give them international experience.
Hmm.
But what's happened now, because Kingsley Jones hasn't been doing that like slow filter of uncapped players into other tournaments to give them more international experience, is you now have this situation that you're currently in where 13 players listed are on uncapped. Of the three
You're now
hookers,
sending a squad of uncapped guys to
yeah, up
Scott.
against
Yeah.
Scotland.
No.
So as in, like, so if you look at the hookers, you have Quatrin, who has 20 caps. Great, fine.
Yeah.
Then you have Dewal Kotzer, who has earned his inclusion in the squad after time with the Jackals. He's uncapped. And then you have Jesse McHale from the Pride, who is also uncapped.
Yeah.
So
With
one of these guys
fly
is,
half too is going to be on.
yeah, we have in the fly half position, we have Balaski from the Pride, who is uncapped, and Jamin Hodgkins, who currently has been playing for the
Yeah.
Bridgend Ravens. He's been playing for the Atlantic Privateers as well, but he is uncapped
Yep.
at test level.
Yeah.
And you have Peter Nelson, you know, he has 19 caps again. Good for
Yeah.
Peter, but it should have been, in the tournament in Spain, the
Yeah.
games against Tonga. That's when you should have been getting like Hodgkins over, or you should have been
Spread
getting,
it out, like,
yeah,
instead of dropping everybody at once. Maybe. Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, again, at the time of recording, we don't have like the team selection for the game against Scotland, but you can imagine that at the very least on the bench, there's going to be a number of uncapped players. Like even scrum half Jason Higgins, he has 13 caps, but he's got Brock Gallagher and Jesse Kilgour. One of those guys is more than likely going to be on the bench against Scotland. And
I think
again, we've got Ben Lesage, Mitch Richardson with 34 caps between them. And then we have Dakota and Talon McMullen, both uncapped.
played
Is
for
one of them
UBC.
going to be uh, benching them? Is
Yeah.
so, and
I think I
yeah,
think like obviously there's a lot. I mean, I think ultimately I will like go back to like, before being like this is kind of what we want. Um
yeah,
but maybe in asking for this the whole time didn't necessarily realize what it looks like right now, and then seeing like, oh, do you want all the new young guys? Because it's like this is what it looks like. Um I think though, like, I was listening to the episode you did with James while I was gone,
mm,
and something kind of did jump out to me because you were talking about that was after Canada. Um, I can't remember who they lost to, but they lost to they failed to qualify for the Sevens World Series next year,
yeah,
right? I
yeah.
can't remember who they lost to seal
I think
that,
it was
but you guys were
Spain.
talking. Yeah, okay, so you guys were talking about that. And James brought up I thought an interesting quote um, from from Nathan Bombery's in their like official statement where he said like, we are all deeply disappointed with the result over the weekend, right?
Yeah,
To which James pointed out is like what about like the rest of the year,
yeah,
right? And I think it's like sometimes I feel like I kind of wonder if that's like a symptom of like what Rugby Canada has been for the past like 15, 20 years, right? Where it's like, you know, hey, like there's a lot of problems with this team, right? Like in,
mm,
do it tightly to the sevens team, it's like, yeah, we've lost 30 games in a row, but we can still get to the like maybe we can still win a game and make it to the next round or whatever,
yeah,
or like qualify for next year. But it's like, okay, the reason you've lost 30 games in a row though is going to be the reason why you lose that game, right? So it's
yeah,
like it's not just the weekend, it's the whole season. And
yeah,
I think like, and I would love to kind of like go back through it, but I think like you mentioned the last time Canada beat Scotland, right, which is
yeah,
2002, right?
yeah,
So it's like that was only like 7 years after the amateur era ended, right?
yeah,
Where I think Canada kept a lot of the amateurism of it and held on to it for too long, right?
yeah,
And it was like for a certain period of time, they were able to hang with doing that, right? They were able to
yeah.
still hang with some good teams. In the
Yeah,
amateur era, they
I've
were
talked
great.
about this with
Yeah,
anyone who listens, is that the last
yeah,
time Canada was competitive at the men's Rugby World Cup was 2015.
yeah,
And so that's 20 years from professionalism.
yeah.
And that means that from 2019 onwards, there has been an entire generation of rugby players, particularly in tier one nations, that only know
Only no
professional
professionalism.
rugby.
Yeah.
Like they,
And we're still just trying to start it here.
yeah,
Like we're
now
just trying to get it
and
off the
again,
floor here.
I'm not saying like this is
Yeah.
anyone's individual fault. Obviously, Canada is a huge country. I mean,
No.
Ontario dwarfs a number of European countries on their own. And at the same time, I think there have been people in positions of power who, didn't think professionalism would stick around, that it would just be a temporary thing, and then it would revert back to its amateur roots. That clearly didn't happen. And
Well,
now this is a question that's both for Canada and I suppose the United States as well, because, you know, we share a number of time zones and stuff, because obviously against playing across multiple time zones is obviously very difficult for a national team to do. but there's got to be something that will work,
I
even if
mean,
it's
every
just
every
on
other
like
s- every other sport in Canada figures it out. Like it's a big
yeah.
country. It's that hasn't changed. It's been a big country forever.
Mm,
Um, I think it's just like ultimately like somewhere down the line it feels like there was, and probably like maybe even before I got interested in rugby, certainly before I started podcasting about it or thinking about
mm,
it in way more detail. But it just seems like as time goes on, it's like okay, like somewhere a mistake was made to be
yeah,
like we're putting out a squad in 2024 that has amateur players on it
yeah,
is like on one hand, like I said, I think including a lot of these guys is probably the right call for what Rugby Canada does need right now, but
yeah,
also should be concerning. Maybe it's something that's like, oh, hey, like there's a lot of guys, like a lot of guys that were on the Arrows or supposed to be on the Arrows aren't playing in the MLR right now, right? A
yeah,
couple of them are maybe on the Highlanders, a couple of them are maybe finding homes elsewhere, but like we lost a lot of guys playing professional rugby with the Arrows folding, right? So like
yeah,
um and I just think unfortunately it's just like as you kind of mentioned, like there was amateur players on the 2019 World Cup team,
yeah,
right? And they went 0-3 and got smacked by
yeah.
everybody at that tournament.
Oh,
Right.
and 4.
Well, no, because they never got to play Namibia.
Oh yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
So
They went 0
oh
and
and
3.
3 and 1, I guess.
Yeah, 0 and 3 in
But
a game that they never played.
yeah,
Um,
God didn't want them to play.
yeah,
So
but so like but I think that's kind of like the point though, right? Is it's like,
yeah,
okay, like they still had amateur players in, right? And granted, one of those amateur players on that team was Ben Lesage, who was genuinely the best center slash back that they could have picked. And
yeah,
you're gonna get exceptional talent like that. And like they're I'm not saying blanketly don't take amateur players, but like seeing it with this amount is like, oh, like I think seeing it with this amount is like, oh, like we might be like a bigger step behind a lot of other countries because like like looking at the squad and it's like I don't necessarily have an issue with bringing in younger guys, but it's like oh, there's a lot of amateur dudes on this team, right? And it's
yeah,
like it's 2024 and in the professional era of rugby, you need to have a professional team to
yeah,
compete, right? Especially if you're
yeah,
Scotland's rocking up to the nation's capital in a week, right? So see how the
yeah,
starting 15 goes and stuff, but I think like I don't know. I just think the whole thing highlights a few issues that Rugby Canada is going to have to
yeah,
deal with. Even though ultimately I do like that they are bringing in the younger guys because you need
yeah.
to give these guys shots, and then
I
hopefully the reverse of it is hopefully they play well, and MLR teams are like, why don't we have that guy? And
yeah,
a couple guys can maybe get picked up and stuff next year, right? And
yeah,
right, like
yeah.
I
I
think
mean,
that's kind
obviously,
of
I'm again the whole thing that I was saying is that this seems to be more of like a dump of uncapped players as opposed to um a
yeah,
tactical
like
flow.
you waited too long and now you have to put
Yeah,
them
now
all.
you're out of options.
Yeah.
So
No,
these guys,
I see your point in that. But the other thing is though, like you said, we haven't seen the squad
yeah.
for
So
starting 15. But that being said, I hope they all play. Like
yeah,
or maybe not all 13 of the uncapped guys, maybe mix that up a little bit over the next two
and
games.
any of the
But
uncapped
like
MLR guys, I'm definitely hoping they
oh,
get
any of the
like
uncapped MLR guys for sure are going. They have to go. I don't even
yeah.
start them all. Like, just be like, I don't know. Like, maybe there's even a point,
Maybe that's for Romania. Well,
or maybe just
we'll
be
see how
like,
it goes.
hey, this is you're the you're part of the best. This is the national team. Like, we got Scotland in front of us. Like, well, like you got to go. You got to have your first cap at some point, anyways, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think, but I do think that Rugby Canada does need to figure out how
Hmm.
to get more guys involved in like full-time professional setups, right? Like that's gonna be I think that still needs to be something that needs to be addressed or figured out or looked at. And maybe they can expand and build upon some of the infrastructure that people are already building. But I think by the time you roll up to the 2031 World Cup, in the USA or even the one before that in Australia, like they're especially for the USA one, I don't think there's going to be a single amateur player at that USA one, like
Bloody
across the
hope
board,
not.
like any country. Like this is like this that amateur era is gone.
Yeah.
Like, um,
Yeah. Well, again, we don't know the squad for that game against Canada, but we will be following along with it on Saturday when the game is shown on TSN. I hope nothing has come out, but seeing as all international games have been shown on TSN or TSN Plus, that's where we're hedging our bets. But one thing we can guarantee is that when they step out onto the pitch, they will be looking great because on Canada
this is
Day,
amazing.
yesterday, we got the reveal of the brand new kit for Rugby Canada. It is being used by both men's and women's teams in the 15s and in the sevens, a part of their one leaf, one nation, one squad um, mantra that they're having. Um, so kit is supplied by Macron again. The home kit, pretty much same red, white trim in the collar, uh, but you get the subtle outlines of maple leaves all on the jersey, on the front and on the back. And then you have the away kit. Now, I know for a lot of people they were saying that you're not a fan of the black kit. Canada's away kit has always been white, and you'll be glad to know that the white kit is back, but there is a lot of black in it as well, not only on the collar, but on the panels on the sides. The sleeves have a black, white, and red banding around, and the maple leaf pattern that I said on the red kit is now that is very subtle on the red kit is incredibly prominent on the white kit. It's black outlines, red outlines for the maple leaves. They look absolutely fantastic. You can buy your replicas at shop.rugby.ca. Uh, Derek, what do you make of them?
Um, I think it's hilarious that they dropped these kits with the slogan that said one leaf, and then the jersey has 39 leaves on it. Um, but little joke aside, I think these are fantastic, man. I really like them. I think I mean, Macron makes the kits, and to be honest, I like a lot of what Macron does. Like whether it's Canada, the Glasgow Warriors, or Scotland, Italy, handful of the other countries, they generally make very nice kit.
Yeah,
It's very good. I think like my one, I don't even know if it's really an issue, but I think like because Canada obviously is red and white, I think sometimes their kit gets in danger of just kind of looking like Wales, right?
yeah,
Which is like, which is understandable if you go kind of with a classic look, right? Like your white collar, red jersey, badge on the over the heart, right? Like it's not necessarily like too surprising that that's kind of going to end up being the case. So for that reason, I do kind of really like the sublimated, like the leaf design on it. I think it helps separate the red kit a lot more, the home kit, from like the other nations that do wear a lot of red or primarily red as well. So I think it kind of gives it a nice little like uniquely Canadian look. That and the fact that like the provinces and territories are also like the names of those territories and stuff are all sublimated on the side of it. um
yeah,
but I think like the white kit, I honestly I like the white kit better, just because like the leaves on it kind of pop a little bit more. I think it's I think it's a kit that's actually like very like uniquely Canadian. Doesn't really look like anybody else. Like it doesn't really look like anybody else. It feels kind of classic, but the Leafs kind of give it a little modern twist and update to it as well, right? So, and it's something that kind of Canada has done, you know, throughout the years and stuff as well. So it's like kind of having some fun with the designs on the front and backs of the jersey as well. So, ultimately a big fan of both of them, and hopefully Hopefully, they have a few more victories in the fabric than the previous kit did.
Yeah, I mean, the last Canada jersey I got was the black men's Rugby World Cup jersey, and I've never had too much of an opportunity to wear that one. But no, looking at
I wish
this,
they did have a third jersey that was black.
I kind
I
of
think
do
they
as
go
well.
three.
But
I think
to
they
me,
go.
I think you can retire a black jersey for a while, especially after Canada beat the Black Ferns. It's like, okay, now we need
Oh, see,
to,
that's the best time to wear black. Assert your
yeah.
dominance right now.
Yeah,
Be like,
I,
this
I
is
will. I
our
will say
jersey
the
now.
the alternative kit with like the black trim on the sides, and because of how this kit works, there's a block panel at like the back of the
Yeah.
shirt at the base of it, so that prominently stands out with black, and yeah, it just
Yeah.
looks incredible. It says that these uh
I just, I,
yeah are made with 100% recycled polyester as well.
there you go.
For
Environmentally
each
friendly.
um. But
Get
yeah,
that.
and at the moment, I think it's only the Sevens jerseys have a sponsor on them. So Velocity Trade, which is their Sevens partner. But the
Or at
replica
least
jerseys
they're
at the moment
selling on.
don't. Sorry.
I said at least that they're selling on the replicas and stuff. Who knows what the
Yeah.
team's team walks out in on Saturday.
Yeah, but I'm saying like if you're not a fan of having big sponsors on your jersey, this is probably like
Oh,
the best
true. Yeah,
time
I know. That's
to
nice.
get them. So again, you can buy those jerseys at store.rugby.ca. They're not cheap. They're $120 each pre-tax for the adult kit and $100 for the youth jersey at the moment. Um, but they look amazing, and you'll look amazing wearing them as well. But while we're on this Rugby Canada topic, and especially as she was one of the models for the jerseys, there has been some sad news that has come out from Rugby Canada. That is that uh, our captain, Sophie de Goody, has unfortunately torn her ACL
Yeah.
in training this past week, which will now, according to medical sources, a ACL tear takes about 6 to 9 months to recover. As a result, De Goody is out of the Olympics and also out of the WXV as well, and probably going to miss the first half of the season for Saracens later this year. Um, Absolutely devastating news for her, but hopefully her recovery is as swift as possible and we'll see her back in the Maple Leaf jersey before too long, especially with the Women's World Cup taking place next year in England. So, Sophie, we know you're a big fan of the show, and we just want to wish you all the best in recovery. And now we finally move from the Pacific Coast to Ontario to the Atlantic Coast because it was the 2024 edition of the Coast to Coast Cup. We had 4 teams this time out. We had the Arrows Academy, we had the Calgary Mavericks, we had the hosts, the Atlantic Privateers, and the Prairie Fire as well. So the format is actually one more game total, but one fewer game for playing, I believe. I may have got that wrong. Either way, more games, more rugby, all better for me. So the format was semi-finals and then moving into the final a few days later. So the semi-finals had the Arrows Academy against the Calgary Mavericks. Final score: Arrows 48, Calgary 10. And you may be thinking like, oh, that's a pretty good score, pretty dominant from the Arrows. And then the Atlantic Privateers decided to step up to the plate against the Prairie Fire. And it was, a bit more. It was basically if you whatever you can do, I can do better kind of scenario. Final score: Prairie Fire nil, Atlantic Privateers 111.
So no mercy rules at the Coast to
Uh,
Coast Cup, eh?
I guess. I mean,
It's not, man.
could have
Mercy
called it
rules
a draw at that
112.
point.
Mercy
Yeah,
rules 112. Yeah. They just didn't quite
Hmm.
make it there. The
Yeah, that
coach, the
was
coach
a
was disappointed in them after he was
yeah,
looking for that
unbelievable.
mercy. It was tough locker room to be in. The Atlantic
Yeah,
Privateers, the 111-0 win.
yeah. So that left the Atlantic Privateers against the Arrows Academy for the main final, with the Prairie Fire versus Calgary Mavericks for
Yeah,
the consolation final. Uh, as we mentioned before, the main final took precedence and then was followed by the consolation final. So it was the Privateers versus the Arrows Academy. Now, this was the closest match of the tournament as a whole. Lots of back and forth. Definitely a better score than when the Privateers last played against the Arrows Academy, but at the end of the day, it was still the Privateers that came out on top. The final score: Atlantic Privateers 34, the Arrows Academy 17. So that means that is the Privateers that lift the Coast to Coast Cup anchor, and it's the first time that the hosts have ever won their tournament. So congratulations to them. In the consolation final, it was the Prairie Fire against the Calgary Mavericks. It was an improvement for the Prairie Fire. They actually scored um, once, and Calgary scored a bit more. Final score: Prairie Fire 7, Calgary 57.
hmm.
So, an improvement against their result against the Privateers. So, we're always looking at the positives, always looking where
Well,
Canadian rugby's going.
yeah. I think
The one
positive
thing,
though was just a couple new teams expanding the tournament a little bit.
exactly, that we gotta look at the positives here. First of all, the Privateers able to lift the anchor for the first time. Toronto and the Arrows Academy, I should say. Um, you know, have had a great season already. It's a bit a step too far, but clearly showing improvement against the Privateers in their final. The return of the Prairie Fire, the return of the Calgary Mavericks. If this means that we can have a similar level of investment to Calgary and Prairie Fire that has been put in
Yeah,
to match the Arrows Academy, then come next year, this tournament's going to be far more competitive. Not having the blowout of 111 to nil, and that can really set a benchmark of how we're
yeah,
seeing the growth of men's rugby in Canada. So I know we've done like a lot of naysaying and disappointment about like the selection for the Ottawa series, but the Coast to Coast Cup has always been like an opportunity for MLR teams to come and scout out like future Canadian talent. We have some of the guys from the Privateers and from the Arrows Academy being named in that squad for the Ottawa series.
yeah.
And so here, and like you mentioned, you're hoping that some MLR teams are paying notice and thinking like, oh, maybe we can have that guy in our squad next year. Um, so always great to see. If I will say, it does feel a bit weird that there's not a team from the Pacific Coast that's come to play in the Coast to Coast Cup. But expansion is clearly an option, as it
From
has been
the
this
Rockies
year.
to Coast Cup.
Yeah, maybe we can do like maybe get two more teams. We can have
I think,
pools of three, and then ranked opposition of who then lifts the anchor at the end.
yeah, I think like that's kind of the only like thing I really kind of wish to see for this tournament. Like not so much who's involved, but like it would be nice to see, yeah, if it can expand to like 6 teams, maybe. Maybe play like a couple more games. Like,
Yeah.
ultimately the teams that went here only played 2 games, right? Like,
Mhm.
if you could find a like if there's like if you can develop, and I mean I'm just like saying this as like wishful thinking,
Mhm.
not really with any mind to like actual resources or costs or ability to pull it off or whatever right now,
Yeah.
but like if it could, you know evolve over time, I guess, into something that's like you get like 6 or so teams involved in it. You can maybe do like a little mini pool stage or like a round robin format or something, get everybody like 4 to 6 games too. Like
Yeah.
even like play it over the course of a month or something. Like and I know I'm just spitballing that with like no mind for like actual
Yeah.
resources or how feasible that actually is. But I mean, I think that's kind of what you want to see out of the Coast to Coast Cup
Hmm.
year in year out right now is just
Yeah.
have the tournament grow a little bit
Yeah.
every year, and then hopefully that develops into something um hopefully that develops into something great. And I mean, if more resources and stuff can get
Yeah.
pumped into
I
it, our hope.
ideally I'd like we've had the East Coast Rugby Championship earlier
Yeah,
this year, and Rugby Quebec went on to win that. I think if we can get them involved, that would
yeah.
be fantastic. And then, get representation of like the BC Bears back out again, and then you can just divide
See,
teams
like
into
that's the
like
whole thing
pools
though,
of
right?
three.
Like we just kind of had that conversation of like, Rugby Canada needs to Rugby Canada needs to like figure out a way to like provide some more like professional long-term elite high performance opportunities for guys, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, is there, based on like what's happening across the country, Coast to Coast Cup, you mentioned like Quebec, the Vancouver Highlanders, all these other teams that kind of seem like they're popping up. And it's like, what I mean? Is there going to be like, like some sort of opportunity in the future, maybe to have like Canada have like their own league? Like, is this
Mm,
something that could develop? Like, is this kind of like something that could be like, planting the seeds to be able to like, maybe kind of do that, have like your own league or at least like a semi-pro league or something that, because like even like there was obviously like the Canadian Rugby Championship, there's Super League, like there's been like versions of like a nationwide elite level rugby competition and stuff, right? And
yeah.
it's, I think maybe there's like a little hopeful thing of maybe we can be like, we're kind of planting the seeds here, and maybe hopefully it's something that maybe Rugby Canada can like foster and help develop as well, right? Be like, we need, like, yeah, maybe we need a little bit of our own league or a little bit of a high performance system set up, even if
Yeah.
it's, through the work of other clubs and other people outside of Rugby Canada. But so maybe need to foster these initiatives and hope they grow into something more.
Yeah, well, on that, the strategic plan for 24 to 29 did mention building at least four high performance area or camps or bases
Yeah,
or whatever by next year. Now,
yeah.
obviously, it's marketed towards women's rugby,
Well,
but
they need
if
to do
it's,
that for the women's team too. It's not,
yeah,
yeah, they,
but if they can also do something similar for the men's team as well, then, rising tides lifts all boats. And on that perfect nautical metaphor, I think we're going to end this episode of the podcast. And if you're looking to watch the game for Canada versus Scotland, our guess is as good as yours. Most of the games have been on TSN or TSN Plus, but follow us on our social media channels and we will let you know. Now, if you like this episode and would like to watch more or read some of our written pieces, you can do so on our website, therougerugby.ca. You can also find the podcast on Spotify, S4P, and Apple Podcasts. We have our YouTube channel at The Rouge Rugby. Make sure to like and subscribe, hit the bell notification, and stay up to date with all our videos. We're also available across social media, including Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Threads, all at The Rouge Rugby. Derek, where can people find you on social media?
at Reset the Jet across all social media platforms.
And you can find me across social media at Hardman, spelled H4RDMAN. That's where we're going to end this episode. Derek, thank you for joining me, and thank you all for joining us for another episode of the Rouge Rugby Podcast, where we talk about real Canadian rugby. We hope you can join us again next time.